The glass exploded inward with a deafening crash as a bleeding Army Ranger stumbled through the emergency room entrance and collapsed onto the polished linoleum floor. Shards scattered across the waiting area like deadly rain. Blood spread beneath him in a widening crimson pool. Outside, beyond the shattered doorway, darkness moved. When several heavily armed figures emerged from the storm and raised their rifles toward the fallen soldier, most people would have run. Night shift nurse Evelyn Hayes stepped directly in front of the barrels. The hospital walls suddenly trembled. The digital clock above the nurse's station glowed an ominous red. 2:14 a.m. Mercy General Hospital sat alone on the edge of Colorado's remote mountain wilderness. Miles from the nearest city, the 50-bed facility served a handful of isolated communities, ski lodges, and mountain towns scattered throughout the region. Chronic budget cuts had left the hospital understaffed and under-equipped. During most night shifts, the emergency department handled little more than broken bones, alcohol-related injuries, and the occasional snowmobile accident. Tonight was supposed to be no different. Evelyn Hayes rubbed her tired eyes as fluorescent lights hummed overhead. At 32 years old, she had spent nearly a decade working emergency medicine. Before becoming a civilian nurse, she had served 2 combat deployments in Afghanistan as an Army medic. She knew trauma. She knew fear. Most importantly, she knew the strange silence that often came just before disaster. Dr. Samuel Harrison was asleep in the break room recliner. The aging physician was only 6 months away from retirement and had perfected the art of napping between patients. The receptionist sat behind the front desk, scrolling through college assignments. Outside, a powerful November blizzard buried the mountain roads beneath thick sheets of snow. The world felt frozen. Then came the sound. Tires screamed against ice. Evelyn's head snapped toward the ambulance bay windows. This wasn't an ambulance. A matte black Chevy Tahoe burst through the swirling snow and jumped the curb at full speed. The SUV smashed through 2 protective bollards before sliding sideways across the parking area. The vehicle looked like it had survived a war. Its windshield was riddled with bullet holes. The passenger side windows were shattered. Sparks flew from a completely destroyed front wheel grinding against the pavement. "Harrison, get out here," Evelyn shouted. Already moving, she grabbed a trauma bag and sprinted toward the entrance. The automatic doors failed to open quickly enough, so she shoved them apart manually. The freezing wind hit her immediately. The driver's door of the Tahoe flew open. A man in tactical gear stumbled out. Blood covered his uniform. He managed 3 unsteady steps before collapsing face-first onto the concrete. The rear passenger door opened next. Another soldier emerged, dragging a massive unconscious man by his vest. "Help him," the standing soldier shouted. His voice cracked with desperation. "He's bleeding out. Please." Evelyn rushed forward and dropped to her knees beside the wounded man. The unconscious soldier was enormous, well over 200 pounds of muscle and equipment. His skin was pale gray beneath layers of blood. "What happened?" Evelyn demanded while examining him. Her hands immediately located the source of the bleeding. A gunshot wound had torn through the right side of his chest. The body armor plate had somehow been missed. The exit wound on his back looked catastrophic. "Ambush," the soldier gasped. His eyes constantly scanned the darkness surrounding the hospital. "They're hunting us. We couldn't reach the base. You have to save." A sharp, suppressed crack sliced through the wind. The soldier stopped speaking. For a moment, he remained standing perfectly still. Then a small red hole appeared in the center of his forehead. He collapsed instantly, dead before he hit the ground. Evelyn froze, only for a fraction of a second. Years of combat training exploded back to life. "Sniper!" she screamed. Dr. Harrison had just emerged through the hospital doors. "Get down!" Another suppressed shot rang out. Without hesitation, Evelyn grabbed the unconscious ranger by the drag handle on his tactical vest and threw her entire weight backward. A bullet struck the pavement exactly where she had been standing. Concrete fragments exploded into the air. Adrenaline surged through her body. The wounded soldier felt impossibly heavy, but she kept pulling. One step, then another. Blood smeared across the linoleum as she dragged him through the shattered entrance. "Lock down the hospital," Evelyn shouted. "Code Silver. Right now." The young receptionist stared in shock. "Evelyn, do it." The receptionist immediately grabbed the emergency phone. Evelyn hauled the soldier into Trauma Room 1 and slammed the reinforced door shut behind them. Dr. Harrison stumbled inside seconds later. His face had turned ghostly white. "Evelyn," he said between breaths. "What the hell is happening? Who are these people?" "Scissors." "What?" "Scissors," she barked. The sharp command snapped him into motion. Evelyn began cutting away blood-soaked armor straps, tactical webbing, and shredded clothing. "I need quick clot." "Snip." "4 units of O-negative." "Snip." "A chest tube kit." "Snip." "And move faster." The physician hurried toward the supply cabinet. As the final section of body armor fell away, Evelyn finally saw the soldier's chest clearly. Her breath caught. The room fell silent. Across the wounded man's torso were dozens of scars. Gunshot scars. Knife wounds. Surgical incisions. Old burn marks. The body of someone who had survived more battles than any ordinary soldier should have. But one detail made her blood run cold. Tattooed just below his collarbone was a black insignia she recognized instantly. An insignia that officially did not exist. A symbol whispered about during her military service. The mark of a classified special operations unit. And if one of their operators had been driven to this hospital half dead, something far worse was coming. Above the massive bullet wound stretching across his chest was the unmistakable crest of the United States Army Rangers tattooed cleanly along his collarbone. The black ink stood out against skin stained with blood and bruises. A pair of military dog tags hung around his neck. One of them carried a name, Miller Wyatt. But it wasn't the tattoo or the dog tags that immediately caught Evelyn's attention. It was the object clenched in his left hand. His fingers were locked around a small encrypted hard drive, gripping it so tightly that his knuckles had turned white despite the massive blood loss. The drive was smeared with crimson. Whatever it contained, he had nearly died protecting it. Suddenly, Wyatt Miller's eyes flew open. The movement was so abrupt that both Evelyn and Dr. Harrison jumped. His pupils were fully dilated. Wild, fearful, desperate. Before Evelyn could react, his hand shot upward and seized her wrist. The grip was crushing. Years of military training had made him powerful. And even while dying, he possessed enough strength to make the bones in her arm ache. "Don't," he rasped. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. "Don't let them take it." His trembling gaze shifted toward the hard drive. "Concencade. Rogue PMC." The words came out in broken fragments. "They slaughtered my team." A violent cough racked his body. Tiny droplets of blood sprayed across the sheets. "If they get the drive, our operatives overseas." His breathing became ragged. "They're all dead." "Captain Miller, stay with me," Evelyn said firmly. Her voice remained calm despite the storm raging inside her mind. "You are in a hospital. You're safe for now." She reached for a packet of combat gauze. "I'm going to pack this wound. It's going to hurt." Wyatt's eyes widened. "They're coming." His grip weakened. "They won't leave witnesses." His head rolled sideways. "Run." The heart monitor emitted a long, uninterrupted tone. Wyatt Miller flatlined. For a split second, the room froze. Then training took over. "He's coding," Harrison shouted. The old doctor grabbed the crash cart. "Start compressions." No time. Evelyn was already moving. She tore open a package of quick clot combat gauze and shoved her gloved hand directly into the open cavity in Wyatt's chest. Harrison stared in horror. Blood soaked her sleeve instantly. "I'm controlling the hemorrhage," she snapped. 1 milligram epinephrine. "Now." The doctor obeyed. As he prepared the syringe, the overhead lights flickered once. Twice. 3 times. Then the entire hospital went black. Every monitor. Every hallway light. Every machine. Gone. The familiar hum of hospital equipment died instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. A heavy mechanical silence settled over Mercy General. Several seconds later, dim yellow emergency lights flickered to life. The backup generator had engaged. Long shadows stretched across the trauma room walls, transforming the sterile environment into something unsettling and sinister. Evelyn exchanged a glance with Harrison. The veteran physician looked terrified. In one trembling hand, he clutched a scalpel like a weapon. From somewhere down the corridor came a frightened voice. "The phones are dead." It was the receptionist. No landlines. No cell signal either. Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. A power outage alone would have been concerning. This was different. The communications blackout meant only one thing. "They're jamming us," she said quietly. Harrison stared at her. "What?" "A localized cellular jammer." The realization settled heavily between them. This wasn't random violence. This wasn't an attack by desperate criminals. This was a coordinated military-style operation. Professional, planned, and whoever was hunting Wyatt Miller had no intention of waiting for law enforcement. They were coming inside. Minutes passed. The backup generator provided just enough electricity to keep essential equipment functioning. Against impossible odds, Wyatt's pulse returned. Weak, thready, barely present, but alive. Evelyn had successfully inserted a chest tube, relieving the tension pneumothorax crushing his damaged lung. The procedure bought time. Not much, but some. Unfortunately, what Wyatt truly needed was emergency surgery. Mercy General lacked the equipment and personnel for that. "We have to evacuate," Harrison whispered. He peered through the small window in the trauma room door. "We can move him through the basement. Use the mortuary corridor. Maybe get to the loading dock." Evelyn shook her head immediately. "They have snipers covering the perimeter. If we stay here, if we go outside, we're dead." She reached down and carefully removed the encrypted drive from Wyatt's loosened grip. For a moment she studied it. Such a small object, yet apparently valuable enough to start a war. She slipped it into the deep pocket of her scrubs. "We move him to radiology." Harrison blinked. "Radiology?" The CT and X-ray rooms are shielded with lead-lined walls. Understanding dawned on his face. "They'll stop rifle rounds." Before either of them could say another word, the hospital's public address system crackled overhead. A calm male voice echoed through the building. Smooth, controlled, terrifying. "Good evening, staff of Mercy General." The voice sounded almost friendly. "My name is Victor Consincade." A brief pause followed. "I apologize for the damage to your facility." Another pause. "We are searching for a patient recently admitted to your emergency department. An Army Ranger." The silence that followed felt suffocating. "He possesses stolen property belonging to my organization." The voice remained perfectly composed. "Surrender him peacefully, and the rest of you may return home to your families." Then his tone hardened. "If we are forced to search room by room, we will do so violently." A faint click echoed through the speakers. "You have 5 minutes." The transmission ended. Harrison's face had gone completely pale. His hands shook uncontrollably. "We have to give him up," he whispered. "Evelyn, listen to me. We're doctors, not soldiers." He looked toward the unconscious ranger. "We can't fight a private army." Evelyn stared at Wyatt Miller, an American soldier who had taken a bullet protecting information powerful enough to trigger a massacre. A patient who had trusted complete strangers with his life. Her decision came instantly. "He's my patient." Her voice dropped to an icy whisper. "And I don't abandon my patients." She locked the gurney wheels. Harrison closed his eyes, then nodded. "All right." He grabbed the 4 bags. "Let's move." Together they burst through the trauma room doors and raced into the dimly lit hallway, pushing Wyatt toward the radiology wing. Behind them, from somewhere near the main entrance, came the terrifying sound of glass shattering. Then heavy boots. Dozens of them. The breach had begun. Victor Consincade's mercenaries were inside the hospital. "Clear the lobby. Check every room." A gruff voice echoed through the darkened hospital corridors. Evelyn and Dr. Harrison pushed Wyatt Miller's gurney into the X-ray observation room. The cramped space barely had enough room for the bed and a few pieces of equipment. "Quick," Evelyn whispered. Together they pulled the heavy lead-lined door shut. Evelyn shoved a supply cabinet against it, creating a makeshift barricade. She switched off the remaining monitors, plunging the room into near-total darkness. Only a faint glow from the emergency lighting slipped beneath the door. "Hide," Evelyn said, pointing toward a narrow storage closet filled with lead aprons and imaging supplies. Harrison stared at her. "What about you?" "I need to stay with him." "Evelyn, go." The doctor hesitated before disappearing into the closet. Evelyn remained beside Wyatt's gurney. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Outside, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Slow, controlled, professional. These weren't panicked criminals searching randomly. They were clearing rooms with military precision. She heard doors being forced open, equipment crashing to the floor, voices communicating through radios. Somewhere farther down the corridor came the frightened voice of the receptionist. Then silence. The footsteps stopped directly outside the X-ray room. Evelyn held her breath. A hand tested the door handle. Locked. Room secured, a muffled voice said from outside. A brief pause followed. Breaching. The next instant, a loud blast shook the doorway. The lock gave way. The heavy door burst inward, sending the supply cabinet sliding across the floor. A dark figure entered the room. The intruder wore tactical gear, night vision equipment, and carried a compact rifle. The faint green glow from his optics swept across the darkness. It took him only seconds to locate the gurney. His radio crackled. Target located. Radiology wing. Moving to confirm. The rifle slowly rose. Evelyn's stomach tightened. The barrel pointed directly at Wyatt Miller. The wounded ranger lay unconscious, completely unaware of the danger standing only feet away. For a fraction of a second, time seemed to stop. Fear disappeared. Doubt disappeared. The years she had spent as a combat medic returned in an instant. The only thing that mattered was protecting her patient. Before the intruder could act, Evelyn burst from the shadows. She threw herself across Wyatt's body, shielding him. The room erupted into chaos. The sudden movement caught the mercenary completely off guard. He staggered backward, his aim disrupted. "Evelyn!" Harrison shouted from somewhere inside the closet. The mercenary recovered quickly. His rifle snapped back toward the gurney. "Move!" Evelyn refused. She remained between the weapon and the unconscious ranger. The intruder cursed and advanced. For one terrifying moment, Evelyn realized there was nothing left she could do. No backup. No escape route. No weapon capable of stopping him. Only determination. Then she felt it. A vibration. At first it was faint, almost impossible to notice. The floor beneath her trembled. The ceiling tiles rattled softly. The mercenary froze. His head tilted upward. The vibration grew stronger. Thump, thump, thump. A deep rhythmic pulse rolled through the building. Rotary blades. Helicopters. Not one. Several. The sound intensified rapidly, overwhelming the howl of the blizzard outside. The mercenary grabbed his radio. "Consincade, you hearing this?" Static answered. Then a voice broke through. For the first time, Victor Consincade sounded frightened. "Abort!" The transmission crackled. "Abort immediately. The perimeter is compromised." More static. Then shouting. They came out of nowhere. They dropped directly. The message ended abruptly. A tremendous explosion thundered outside. The entire hospital shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Several emergency lights shattered, plunging portions of the hallway into darkness. The mercenary stumbled. His radio erupted with overlapping voices. Panicked voices. Desperate voices. Not calm tactical communications. Not professional reports. Fear. Pure fear. "Contact! We've lost the east entrance. Fall back! Where did they come from?" Another explosion echoed somewhere beyond the hospital walls. The mercenary's confidence vanished instantly. He backed toward the doorway. For the first time since entering the room, he looked uncertain. Outside, the sounds of combat grew louder. Boots pounded through the corridors. Commands echoed through the darkness. But these voices were different. Disciplined. Precise. Relentless. Whoever had arrived wasn't here to negotiate. They were here to hunt. Evelyn remained crouched over Wyatt's gurney as the battle raged beyond the shattered doorway. The balance of power had shifted, and everyone in the hospital could feel it. The screams coming from the hallway were no longer commands or tactical reports. They were screams of fear. Pure, unfiltered fear. "Contact!" Someone shouted from somewhere beyond the radiology wing. An instant later, the corridor erupted into chaos. A thunderous barrage of automatic gunfire shook the hospital walls. The sound was completely different from the quiet, suppressed weapons the mercenaries had been using all night. This was louder, heavier, and relentless. The entire building seemed to vibrate under the assault. The mercenary standing inside the X-ray room immediately abandoned Wyatt Miller. His head snapped toward the doorway as his rifle came up. "What the?" Something small bounced across the floor. The metallic cylinder rolled to a stop beside his boots. Training took over. Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut and covered her ears with her good arm. A blinding flash filled the room. The concussion struck like a physical wave. The mercenary was thrown backward as the flashbang detonated. Before he could recover, 3 dark figures surged through the doorway. They moved with terrifying precision. Fast, silent, coordinated. For sharp shots echoed through the smoke-filled room. Then silence. The threat was gone. Evelyn slowly opened her eyes. Her vision swam through the haze. 3 heavily armed soldiers stood between her and the doorway. They weren't police. They weren't local law enforcement. And they certainly weren't part of Consincade's force. One of the newcomers stepped forward. He was broad-shouldered and powerfully built, his gear carrying the scars of countless deployments. A tactical radio was secured across his chest. The patch on his shoulder caught the beam of a flashlight. A dagger, 3 lightning bolts, and beneath them, a familiar Latin phrase, de oppresso liber. Evelyn immediately recognized it. The Green Berets. The soldier knelt beside her. His eyes quickly assessed the room, Wyatt's condition, and Evelyn's injuries. "Hold on, Doc," he said. His voice was calm despite the chaos surrounding them. "We've got the watch now." Behind him, more operators flooded into the hospital. The hunters had suddenly become the hunted. The smell of smoke drifted through the room. Emergency lights flickered overhead. Somewhere down the corridor, boots pounded across tile floors as teams secured one section of the hospital after another. The squad leader rose to his feet. "Lock down the ward," he ordered into his microphone. His voice carried absolute authority. "Hold the junction. Nobody gets beyond the nursing station." Several acknowledgements immediately answered through the radio network. The operators moved without hesitation. Every command was executed instantly. A second soldier dropped beside Evelyn. His name tag read Jackson. Unlike the others, his focus wasn't on the fight. It was on the patients. He quickly opened a medical pouch and began evaluating her condition. "You with me, Doc?" he asked. Evelyn nodded. "Barely." Her shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. Jackson worked efficiently, checking her mobility and stabilizing the injury. "You're going to be sore for a while," he said. "But you're still in the fight." Despite the circumstances, Evelyn almost laughed. The simple confidence in his voice somehow made everything feel manageable. Her attention shifted toward Wyatt. "The Ranger," she said. Jackson immediately moved to the gurney. He examined the chest tube, the dressings, and the monitors. For several long seconds, he said nothing. Then he looked back at her. "You did good." The words carried genuine respect. "You kept him alive." Evelyn released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Major John Taggart, the team leader, turned from the doorway. "Status?" Jackson shook his head. "Critical. We need surgical intervention as soon as possible." Taggart frowned. "Medevac?" "Immediately." The major's expression darkened. "Negative." Jackson looked up. "The weather?" "The weather. The terrain. And the fact that somebody out there has anti-air capability." Taggart pointed toward the darkness beyond the hospital walls. "Our helicopters got us onto the roof, but they couldn't stay. They're holding several miles away." Evelyn felt her stomach sink. Even with help, they weren't safe. "Not yet. We're boxed in," Taggart continued. "Until we clear the perimeter, nobody leaves." Outside the X-ray room, the battle continued. Gunfire echoed throughout the hospital. The mercenaries weren't amateurs. Even cornered, they fought aggressively. They knew exactly what would happen if they were captured. And desperation made dangerous people even more dangerous. A radio crackled somewhere in the corridor. "North stairwell secured." Another voice followed. "2 hostiles detained." Then another. "Roof access clear." The Green Berets were systematically taking control of the building. Room by room. Hallway by hallway. Yet the fighting hadn't completely stopped. Somewhere deeper inside the hospital, isolated pockets of resistance remained. Taggart checked his watch. "How many civilians?" "Receptionist. 1 doctor. 1 nurse. 1 patient." "Get them all accounted for." "Already working it." For the first time all night, Evelyn felt a small spark of hope. Maybe they were actually going to survive. Then the hospital intercom crackled overhead. Every person in the room froze. A burst of static echoed through the speakers. Then a voice filled the building. Victor Consincade. But he sounded nothing like the calm, confident man who had threatened the hospital earlier. The polished professionalism was gone. The control was gone. Now there was only anger and panic. "You think you've won?" His voice snapped through the speakers. Static interrupted him. When he spoke again, the strain was obvious. "Listen carefully." Nobody moved. Every operator listened. Every nurse. Every doctor. Every wounded survivor. Consincade laughed. It was a harsh, unstable sound. "You have no idea what's on that drive." Taggart's expression hardened immediately. Across the room, Evelyn instinctively touched the pocket of her scrubs where the encrypted device remained hidden. Consincade continued. "You can kill every one of my men. It won't matter." Another burst of static followed. "Because by sunrise, the truth comes out." The intercom hissed. Then his voice returned one final time. Lower, colder, more dangerous than before. And when it does, nobody in this hospital will ever be the same again. The transmission abruptly ended. Silence settled across the room. Even the distant gunfire seemed quieter now. Taggart slowly looked toward Evelyn, then toward Wyatt Miller. Whatever was stored on that encrypted drive was far bigger than anyone had imagined. And the battle for it was only beginning. You arrogant military fools. Victor Consincade's voice exploded from the hospital's PA system. The confidence that had once defined his tone was gone, replaced by raw anger. You think you can just drop in here and take what's mine? Static crackled through the speakers. I know exactly who you are. I know you're looking for Miller. But unlike you, I know this building. The room fell silent. Every Green Beret listened. Every nurse. Every doctor. Every wounded survivor. Then Consincade spoke again, and the words sent a chill through Evelyn's veins. I have your doctor. A pause. And the receptionist. Major Taggart's expression hardened instantly. They are currently in the basement utility level beside the hospital's central oxygen system. Another pause. Longer this time. I've wired the area with enough explosives to destroy this entire wing. The threat hung in the air like a storm cloud. Surrender Miller and the encrypted drive. His voice lowered. Or everyone dies. The transmission ended with a burst of static. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Taggart pressed a finger against his earpiece. Status on the basement. A response came immediately. Alpha 2 here. The voice sounded tense. Hostiles have fortified the utility corridor. Heavy doors. Barricades. Limited access points. A brief pause followed. If we attempt a direct assault, they can trigger the explosives before we reach them. Taggart frowned. We need another option. Evelyn slowly lowered her eyes toward her pocket. The encrypted drive pressed against her side. Everything seemed to revolve around that tiny metal device. Wyatt Miller had nearly died protecting it. American operators had been hunted because of it. And now innocent hospital staff were being used as leverage to recover it. A realization settled into place. Major. Her voice was weak but steady. Taggart looked down. He doesn't want Miller. The Green Beret commander remained silent. He wants the drive. Slowly, Evelyn reached into her pocket. The blood-smeared device appeared in her hand. Several operators exchanged surprised glances. Taggart's eyes narrowed. You had it this entire time? He thinks Wyatt still has it. Evelyn tightened her grip. You need a distraction. No. The answer came instantly. Taggart stepped forward. Hand it over. His voice carried the weight of an order. You've done enough. Evelyn shook her head. No, doctor. I wasn't always a doctor. The room grew quiet. For a moment, she wasn't standing in a hospital. She was back in Afghanistan. Back in combat. Back in the places where impossible decisions became routine. I served as an army combat medic. Taggart studied her carefully. He expects soldiers. Evelyn held up the drive. He expects a tactical breach. Another explosion echoed somewhere above them. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Time was running out. He doesn't expect me. Jackson stepped forward. This is a terrible idea. Probably. He'll kill you. Not immediately. Evelyn's voice remained calm. As long as he believes I can destroy this drive, he has to keep talking. The medic shook his head. You're injured. I know. You can barely stand. I know that too. Taggart watched her in silence. He had spent decades evaluating people under pressure. Fear. Courage. Determination. Resolve. He recognized the look in Evelyn's eyes. It was the same look he'd seen in soldiers who volunteered for missions nobody else would accept. The same look he'd seen before acts of extraordinary courage. Finally, he exhaled slowly. You buy us time. Evelyn nodded. That's all I need. Taggart pointed toward the hallway. We move behind you. His voice dropped lower. You do not take unnecessary risks. A faint smile crossed Evelyn's face. Coming from a Green Beret, that's almost funny. Several operators exchanged amused looks despite the tension. Taggart didn't smile. You have 1 minute. The descent into the basement felt surreal. Emergency lights flickered overhead. The stairwell was dim and shadowed. Every step sent pain through Evelyn's body. Her shoulder ached relentlessly. Her legs felt weak. But she kept moving. The encrypted drive remained visible in her hand. Exactly as planned. Behind her, hidden within the darkness, Taggart and 3 operators followed. They moved like ghosts. Silent. Disciplined. Almost invisible. No words were exchanged. Only hand signals. Only preparation. Only focus. The deeper they descended, the quieter the hospital became. The sounds of fighting above faded into the distance. The air grew colder, heavier. By the time they reached the utility level, the atmosphere felt oppressive. A maze of concrete corridors stretched ahead. Electrical conduits lined the walls. Emergency lights cast long shadows across the floor. Then Evelyn saw it. The barricade. It blocked nearly the entire corridor. Hospital beds, supply carts, storage cabinets, maintenance equipment. Everything had been stacked together into a massive defensive position. Beyond it stood reinforced steel doors protecting the utility room. The final stronghold. The last position held by Consincade's men. Evelyn stepped forward into the open. Behind her, hidden beyond a concrete support pillar, Taggart and his operators froze into position. Waiting. Watching. Ready. The encrypted drive gleamed beneath the flickering emergency lights. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then a speaker somewhere beyond the barricade crackled to life. Victor Consincade laughed. Slowly. Confidently. I was wondering when you'd arrive. Evelyn tightened her grip on the drive. The final confrontation had begun. The barricade was enormous. Overturned medication carts, hospital beds, supply cabinets, and filing units had been stacked together into a chaotic wall of metal and debris. It completely blocked the entrance to the utility room. Emergency lights flickered overhead. Through a narrow gap in the barricade, Evelyn could see the terrified receptionist kneeling on the concrete floor. Beside her was Dr. Harrison. The aging physician looked exhausted and bruised, but alive. Standing directly behind them was Victor Consincade. One hand gripped a detonator. The other held a pistol. Even from a distance, his expression radiated desperation. He was a man running out of options. Consincade, Evelyn called. Her voice echoed throughout the basement corridor. The mercenary leader immediately turned toward the sound. His eyes narrowed. For a moment he seemed surprised. Then recognition flashed across his face. "The nurse," he said. A cold smile appeared. "The one who thinks she's a hero." Evelyn ignored the insult. She stepped farther into the open. "I have what you want." Consincade's gaze dropped to the object in her hand. The encrypted drive. Immediately, his attention locked onto it. Behind the nearby concrete pillar, Major Taggart and his operators remained perfectly hidden. Waiting. Watching. Preparing. "Miller is dead," Evelyn said. The lie came effortlessly. "The Green Berets have already taken the upper floors. Your men are losing." Consincade's jaw tightened. "You have no way out." For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then it disappeared. His pistol pressed against Dr. Harrison's head. "You think I'm stupid?" The receptionist gasped. Harrison squeezed his eyes shut. Consincade laughed. A harsh, unstable sound. "You don't understand." He raised the detonator. "If I can't leave with that drive, nobody leaves." The blinking indicator light on the device seemed impossibly bright. One press. That was all it would take. The entire basement seemed to hold its breath. "Slide it through the gap," Consincade ordered. "Now." Evelyn didn't move. Instead, she slowly reached into her pocket. A second object appeared in her hand. A heavy magnetic safety block from the radiology department. Solid metal. Dense. Weighty. Without breaking eye contact, she crouched down and placed the encrypted drive carefully onto the concrete floor. Then she held the metal block directly above it. Consincade frowned. "What are you doing?" Evelyn's voice remained calm. "This isn't just data." She tapped the drive lightly. "It's evidence." The mercenary leader's expression darkened. "If this casing is crushed, everything inside is destroyed." She raised the metal block slightly. One strike. The room fell silent. "You detonate those explosives, I drop this." Consincade stared at her. "You won't." "Try me." For several seconds, neither of them moved. The tension became unbearable. Evelyn could almost hear him thinking, calculating, evaluating every possible outcome. If he triggered the explosives, he might kill everyone. But he could also lose the drive forever. The very thing he had sacrificed so much to obtain. His grip on the pistol loosened slightly. His attention shifted downward, toward the drive, toward the metal block suspended above it, toward the possibility of failure. That moment lasted less than a heartbeat. But for Major John Taggart, it was enough. "Execute," he whispered into his microphone. Everything happened at once. A maintenance panel above the utility room burst open. An operator dropped silently from the overhead space. Before Consincade could react, the soldier crashed into him with overwhelming force. The detonator flew from his hand. The pistol skidded across the floor. At the same instant, Taggart and his team surged forward. The barricade that had seemed impossible to breach moments earlier collapsed under their coordinated assault. Metal carts were shoved aside. Hospital beds toppled over. Operators flooded into the room. Commands echoed from every direction. Hostages secure. Utility room clear. Watch the explosives. Within seconds, the fight was over. The remaining mercenaries surrendered or fled. The threat had ended. Major Taggart picked up the fallen detonator and held it aloft. "Basement secure," he announced into his radio. Relief washed across the room. The receptionist burst into tears. Dr. Harrison sagged against the wall. Even the Green Berets looked slightly less tense. Evelyn finally allowed herself to breathe. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night vanished all at once. Pain returned. Exhaustion followed. Her knees gave out beneath her. The last thing she heard was someone shouting her name. Then darkness claimed her. When Evelyn opened her eyes again, everything was quiet. Bright fluorescent lights shone overhead. The air smelled of antiseptic. A cardiac monitor beeped steadily nearby. For several seconds, she simply stared at the ceiling. Confused. Disoriented. Safe. Her right arm rested in a supportive brace. Bandages covered her shoulder. The room was clean and modern, very different from Mercy General. A voice broke the silence. "Welcome back, document." Evelyn slowly turned her head. Major John Taggart sat beside the bed. Gone were the combat helmet, body armor, and tactical gear. Instead, he wore a neatly pressed military dress uniform. For the first time, he looked almost ordinary. Almost. Evelyn managed a weak smile. "How long?" "3 days." She blinked. "What happened?" Taggart leaned back slightly. "The hostages survived." A pause. "The drive survived." Another pause. "And Captain Wyatt Miller survived." Relief flooded through her. She closed her eyes briefly. Taggart smiled. A rare expression. "You saved a lot of lives that night." Evelyn looked out the hospital window. Morning sunlight filled the room. For the first time in what felt like forever, there were no gunshots. No explosions. No alarms. Only peace. And for now, that was enough.